Hey guys, and welcome back to the Warwick F1 show. This is episode 26 of the 2025 season, and after a thoroughly exciting Austrian Grand Prix, Formula One is back on our screens as we head to Silverstone for the British Grand Prix. I'm your host for this one, Anwar, and I'm joined by Daniel and Callum. So thank you guys for coming on, as we are going to be looking at predicting what we expect to see at the Silverstone circuit in Northamptonshire. I guess firstly, kind of discussion that I want to talk about is what do we think will be the things that bleed from the last weekend in Austria to this weekend in Silverstone? Do we think there'll be any things that kind of are important takeaways that will apply to this weekend, starting with Callum?
Well, I mean, I suppose we should talk about the McLarens, even though we do talk about the McLarens a lot on this podcast, but then they are the two championship contenders ultimately, and they are miles ahead, it seems, as their nearest rivals, which is either Verstappen or the Ferraris. I think, even though we do say it a lot, I think this weekend is going to be very important for both drivers. Not only is obviously Norris really emphasizing the fact that he's back in this championship fight with his amazing performance in Austria. So, but then the gap is still, I think, about 15 points in the championship with Piastri ahead. So he's going to be looking to try and reduce that advantage even further than he already has in Austria. And obviously it's his home race, so that's it's going to be the perfect ground to do it if he can do it. But meanwhile, Piastri, I'm sure is not going to be happy with how things panned out in Austria. He certainly, when he got out of the car, he looked very disappointed, maybe in himself, maybe in the events that transpired in the race, or just the result in general. So I think he's once again going to be looking for a dominant performance and re-establish his authority, I suppose, on the championship like he might have had before Austria. So it's good. Yeah, so I think that's a very big talking point for this time round. And maybe also a few other things which we will talk about, I think, in this episode. Maybe Mercedes looking to bounce back after a very poor weekend. A couple of teams looking to sort out their reliability issues, i.e. Williams, and just some other things like that.
Daniel, same question to you, I guess. What are the things that you look at from the Austrian Grand Prix weekend that could really affect things on the track here?
Maybe I'm going to be a bit different and say I think some great racing is going to transfer across from Austria to Silverstone, because it doesn't always happen that way in Formula One. But, you know, Silverstone is such a great circuit. I think it's the best circuit for the balance of spectacle and racing, because Sao Paulo gives us the best racing on the calendar, but it isn't the most impressive to watch in qualifying. Maybe similar thing with Austria, to be honest. Suzuka's a great spectacle, but it's hard to overtake. In Spa, you can overtake and it's a spectacle, but the passes are straightforward, and maybe there's not so much wheel-to-wheel action. But Silverstone is great in qualifying, and it generates some great racing. I want to see some more through goes Hamilton. I'm so ready. I mean, the cars look like they accelerate as they go through Copse because of the dramatic direction change. And then you've got the legendary Maggots and Beckett's. It's just immense. So with that said, who is going to have those epic on-track battles? Well, I hope it's the McLaren drivers again, because those 20 laps were not enough for me. I want a full 50 laps of just hammer and tong. We've seen it in Silverstone before, of pure racecraft and aggression. I think this is the perfect place for it to happen, to be honest. I hope it doesn't end in a collision, because I feel like there's going to be another one at some point this year that's maybe a bit more controversial, let's say, than the one in Canada. But you know, I'm just really looking forward to seeing it. I think the midfield's going to be close, as well as it always is, and this circuit gives a great opportunity to demonstrate how close and how tight the field in Formula One is, except maybe at the front, we'll see. But yeah, what a Ferrari is the question we ask every weekend, and I'm asking it again right now. You know, battling Mercedes, Red Bull, perhaps Verstappen. There's so many unknowns.
It truly is a circuit. I think it's a great stage, I guess, to have this championship battle really accelerate in terms of tension. at a circuit like Silverstone, right? It, like you mentioned, it's such an entertaining track to watch. The drivers all love it. They all find it a very entertaining track to drive to. And having a championship battle come here, with Lando Norris having his own stand this weekend, the Lando stand, or I think that's what it's called, and having that type of home support will really make this an entertaining weekend for sure. You mentioned the two McLarens being going hammer and tong, going toe-to-toe, like we've all kind of wanted all season. Do we expect that to continue? And I guess, do we think that we're going to have it only be a two-horse fight? Or do we think that the other teams, the likes of the Mercedes, the likes of Verstappen, can really get involved on a circuit like Silverstone?
It will definitely be a fight between the McLarens for sure. Obviously, I don't think that we might get the kind of battle that we saw at the start. It might depend on who starts on pole ultimately, because I do think that if Piastri does start on pole, then he is going to be very good at getting away and perhaps building that 1 second gap to disable DRS for the driver behind, which we've seen him do so many times this season quite well. That's something that Norris wasn't able to do at the start of Austria, and that's why we got that really great battle for the lead. Now, that's not to say that I don't think Norris could come back into the race after that. I do think that he would be able to, depending on what strategies McLaren employ and what events transpire in the race. But I think that could depend on it. I do think that Verstappen could come into it in some way. I think that if the Red Bull car isn't very up to speed like it was that we saw in qualifying in Austria, then assuming obviously this time that he doesn't crash out of the race, then it's possible that I think he might finish in a very lonely third. I think he really has the potential to climb through the pack and overtake both the Ferraris and possibly the Mercedes, depending on how the Mercedes performs. Again, something we'll talk about a bit later is where we think the Mercedes are actually going to be. But I think that Verstappen will climb through the field. If the Red Bull car's a bit better and he can actually challenge for pole properly, then he could really be up there fighting with the McLaren. So I do think it's going to be similar to Austria. Verstappen will hopefully get involved if the Red Bull car's up to speed, and who knows, maybe the Mercedes as well. Hopefully.
Yeah, Daniel. I think we all hope to see the Mercedes and the Red Bulls also being in the fight, being present. Daniel, in terms of the weather, we're looking at potential rain and I guess more overcast conditions on Saturday and Sunday, which are ultimately the days that really matter in Formula One. Do we think those types of conditions will favour certain teams? And if so, what teams would like to have this type of weather conditions on Sunday and Saturday?
I wonder. I hate to say the obvious, but I think Mercedes might be a bit more competitive when there are more overcast conditions or rain or just anything to cool the track down, really. Lots of shade might even do it. Obviously, that's not going to work in Silverstone because it's an airfield, which means it's very flat and not many buildings. Obviously, there are grandstands, but they don't really provide much. So, yeah, we're looking at potential Mercedes resurgence, I want to say. Maybe I'll reflect that in my predictions. Who knows? Or maybe I'm just contradicting myself. But Ferrari and Red Bull, they seem kind of neutral to weather conditions. It doesn't really matter. They have troubles of their own. Red Bull's is just pace, especially in the second car, and Ferrari's is outside of the car, but also some teething problems that they have from within the car as well. So, there are many things that could go wrong. And at the same time, any of their engines could go pop, especially if they're a Mercedes-powered team. That seems to be the trend. But maybe, especially if they're Williams. Alex Albon's had 3 DNFs in a row. Carlos Sainz didn't even start the last race. So we could be looking at that and thinking someone's in trouble. George Russell hasn't even finished 2 of the last 3 British Grand Prix, and he certainly hasn't finished on the podium. So I'd like to see him mix it with the McLarens and maybe get up there this weekend.
We should also mention as well that I think for any overcast conditions or any rain that we know is a good chance for the Saturday and the Sunday, I think that disfavors the McLarens, because we know that the McLaren is probably the most dominant car on the grid, at least generally for all conditions, or for all normal conditions. And if it was a completely dry race, then we would obviously expect McLaren to be able to dominate and completely control the race. But I think if you have rain, that introduces another element of unpredictability and uncertainty into the race, and also more chance of chaos. So not only different strategies switching between wet and dry tyres, but also higher chance of safety car and red flags for any instances that might happen on track, or something that could lead to an unlikely win from one of the drivers in the teams behind, so like Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, or even lower down teams, which we've seen before. So I think the rainy conditions, even though it wouldn't necessarily mean that the McLaren car is worse, but it means that will hinder their ability to completely control the race, which is ultimately what they want to do to get a 1-2 finish like they did in Austria.
Yeah, I mean, the point you're talking about reducing the McLaren advantage. We know that their strength is that tyre wear and that tyre management. We saw Oscar Piastri, as Christian Horner said, make love to the exhaust of Lando Norris's car, and was still able to push for an extended period of time. So that shows that they have that advantage. And I think having these overcast conditions, which might be less punishing on the tyre, as well as having rain, which is also like a completely different factor too, they can render that advantage a little bit less useful. So well, hopefully it does, because I think the stage should really be set for a fight that could see 4 or 5 different cars be in contention, which is exactly what we want to see in Formula One. In terms of what we like looking around the rest of the pack, Williams haven't had their good fortune, and this is ultimately a home race. You know, they're a British team based in Grove. We're going to Silverstone, which is also in Britain. Do we think that they will be able to put on a show for the many fans, including the couple that are on this podcast?
Perhaps if they don't blow up. I mean, it's been woeful. You could, we're getting close to Nigel Mansell levels of unreliability, to be honest. I think there were like 4 seasons where he either finished on the podium or DNF'd the whole year, and like 2 other seasons where he finished top 4 or DNF. I think he DNF'd half of all the races he took part in. He did somewhere close to 200 Grand Prix, and he DNF'd in half of them, which is crazy to say. Several seasons he might have been champion if the car had been a bit more reliable, but that was how Formula One was back then. And this year we seem to be approaching a similar situation for Williams, especially. You know, you might be wondering why Lucy's not here. It might be bereavement leave for Williams's pace at this point, and just their mediocrity or even being below average that we've seen from them. They are working to fix it. Alex Albon has said that they just need to kind of regroup, and Carlos Sainz has said the same thing. They just need to kind of focus on execution and kind of rallying back together and focusing on what areas do we need to tighten up on to make sure this doesn't happen again, because it has been happening again and again. But, you know, if anyone can get on top of it, James Vowles and his team can. I'm sure of that.
Callum, do you have the same faith in Williams to turn around the fortunes of their season? Because these last few races have been pretty poor for them.
I think lack of faith might be a best description. Look, I do think that eventually, as Daniel said, I do have trust that James Vowles and his team will be able to get on top of things like this. But the trouble is that these developments take time, and from what it seems like, they really haven't made much progress yet. I mean, Austria was the low of the lows, a double DNF, totally on reliability issues. Carlos Sainz not even being able to start the race. So even though I do, and not because I don't want to, I really love seeing Williams and the progress that they've made, and I really want to see them do well. I'm a big fan of Williams, but I just think that it's going to be a couple more races until we see Williams properly sort out those reliability issues, especially judging that we only have a week turnaround between Austria and Silverstone. That's really not a lot of time to get on top of these issues that they clearly have in Austria. So as much as I really want them to get on top of these issues, I unfortunately don't see it, and that is reflected in my predictions. I don't see it for Silverstone.
A little bit of foreshadowing ahead of the prediction segment of the show there from Callum. In terms of just some other things to think about, Kick Sauber have showed a level of consistency we didn't really expect from them over the last few races. That midfield battle has always been tight. And do we think that we are going to get, with Kick Sauber coming back to form, Daniel, do we think that this is going to be a very exciting race for the lower levels of the points?
Yeah, certainly. I think it always is, to be honest. We've got Haas in there as well, mixing it in. We've got Liam Lawson back on form. I'm curious to see what he can achieve. But Sauber, I mentioned in the preview that their upgrades that they brought for Austria, in the review of Austria, those upgrades that they bought for that weekend weren't even entirely targeted towards overall pace, especially in Austria. You need a bit more downforce to see those upgrades take place. Silverstone is not huge downforce. Obviously, you need it for sections like Copse and Maggots and Beckett's, but there are also quite a few straight line sections, so it's a bit of a balance. So I'm inquisitive as to whether maybe we need to wait a little bit more for that. But as it is, the package that they've got is great. So, I have no worries at all about them being able to mix it back in the lower reaches of the points yet again. Maybe Hulkenberg will be on for in a row, which none of us would have predicted at the beginning of the season. I'm curious, Anwar, are you beginning to kind of accept Sauber's existence? Because I know you were pretty discarding of it in the past.
They get swayed by performance, and they've performed well. So I have to take notice of their good form and the fact they've actually done good for themselves. My actual dislike towards them was the fact that they just were fading into irrelevancy. They weren't really on pace at all. They weren't really an interesting team to look at in terms of fighting and being around the points. But the fact that they're in this discussion and they've made a congregated midfield even more congregated, with ultimately all the jeopardy that comes alongside that too. It makes it very exciting. So I absolutely have to acknowledge their existence now, even if I don't particularly like the look of their Xbox and wheels that they're trying to go for. Cool. I think that's all we can kind of pose up. And I guess the last thing is, do we think Tsunoda's going to be able to recover from the weekend that he had? He had a bit of a nightmare last weekend in Austria, Callum. Do we think that he is going to be able to get back and at least score some points for a team that really feels like it's only got one driver at the moment?
No, I don't have any faith in Tsunoda. Not that it's not faith in Tsunoda, because I as we mentioned last time round, in our Austria review, I think we're all pretty certain that it's the car at the moment. But no, it just seems like he's in the same pattern that we've seen time and again from Perez, from Lawson, where it's just there's just no pace in that car. He's going to probably be out in Q1, and he's probably going to finish near to the bottom of the grid, or maybe even crash trying to make his way up the field, which I don't even think he'll be able to do in the race either. So yeah, it's really disappointing to say, but it's nothing to do with Tsunoda. I really have liked Tsunoda for all the time he's been in Formula One. I think he's done incredible things in the AlphaTauri, what became then the RB and the Racing Bulls, however many names they've had. But I've really liked him, but unfortunately he has, I think, now succumbed to the Red Bull curse, the Red Bull second seat curse.
It's a curse that's affected so many a talented driver, and it sounds, by the looks of things, does look like Tsunoda is one of them who has also joined that list of people affected. Let's move on to our prediction segment of the show, because this is a set of predictions that honestly could go in any direction here. We mentioned that the Mercs can be in contention here. Verstappen is never a force to be forgotten about. Ferrari, who knows what they can do? They're a bit of a Pandora's box. So let's see what we think is going to happen this weekend. Daniel, would you like to start us off here?
I would love to So, given that it's the British Grand Prix, I thought I'd go all in on the British bias. I've got my chips and I'm pushing them forward to the middle of the table with both hands on the Brits. We're going to have a brilliant weekend. British 1, 2, 3. So we're going to have George Russell finishing in first position.
Oh, yes. I like this.
Yes, we are.
What
It's
on earth is
another
this?
Mercedes purple patch that they had last year when they won 3 out of 4 races. This time it's going to be 2 out of 3 at least for George Russell. P2 is going to be Lewis Hamilton, who's going to re-find that form, which he always seems to at Silverstone. It's his stomping ground. 9 wins, which is frankly extraordinary because a lot of drivers don't last 9 seasons, let alone win a race in every single one. So we're going to have him second place. We're going to have Norris rounding out the podium in P3, who's going to take down that championship lead a little bit. The British crowd are going to be happy that they get to go home and watch Norris put one on his teammate, who is going to finish P4 because I realistically can't put Behrman in 4th position because that wouldn't score me any points and would be quite costly. So I have to put Piastri there. And Antonelli in 5th position just for the sake of, again, being realistic. If Mercedes are good, Antonelli will be there like he was in Canada. He won the sprint race, I think it was, in Silverstone last year in F2. So he's got form there. And I'm expecting to see it again. So that is my top 5 predictions for the British Grand Prix.
Who did you say was on pole, by the way?
Oh yes, pole position. That is also going to be George Russell.
Because that's also a position that we predict. But you think it's a George Russell conversion from pole?
Yes, yeah. I just said that because I forgot to predict pole position, and it's entirely possible that it could happen. So I'm just waiting to come on and pull the smug face when all those predictions come in.
And particularly considering the fact that Mercs have shown and proven that they can be competitive when the sun isn't blaring down on them. So there's absolute reason to have this prediction, and I do like the fact we're going full patriotism and saying a full British top 3, which is something that I'm sure a lot of people of this podcast would love to see. Callum, why don't you follow up with your top 5 and pole position?
I thought you were going to ask me why did I agree with Daniel. I certainly don't agree with Daniel. I like the patriotism, but you haven't even chosen the right ordering for the top 3. You said Russell and then Hamilton, which I really wasn't expecting. Obviously, I would really love to see a British top 3. I think that would be amazing, but certainly optimistic. So I've gone for. I have gone pole position Lando Norris. So I've gone a bit of similar lines. I do think it's going to be. I have got a bit of hope for the Brits in this race. So I've said Lando Norris pole position, and then he's going to convert that into a win. With Piastri close behind, I do think it's going to be a similar case with Austria, where if Lando Norris is up there, then surely Piastri, unless he's taken out early on from the start for whatever reason, I think he is inevitably going to be up there. He's got that consistency about his racecraft now, at least on the form that he's on. So Norris P1 and Piastri P2. I've put Verstappen P3. I do think that Verstappen, if he were to finish the race, he easily could have got up to that top 3. We know he's got that potential in him, even if the car isn't performing as well. And also, I do think if we've got quite a bit of rain expected for Sunday, then we know that the drivers with more experience are going to favour those conditions, essentially. And so I do think that Verstappen could obviously really come into his element in the rain compared to the other drivers. I'm going with Russell P4. Again, as we were mentioning, expecting potentially the Mercedes car to perform better than the Ferraris in the cooler conditions. And then I've gone with a Leclerc P5 to round out my top 5.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really argue against any of the predictions you've said. I think there's a lot of things to think about. You mentioned the wet weather. We mentioned the Hamilton kind of Silverstone form as well. There's a lot of different factors at play. I've kind of combined the two of your top 5s in terms of I feel a little bit. I've got a bit of the patriotism side of things, but I have also considered the fact that the McLaren is still the strongest car on the grid. So I've gone for Lando Norris pole, and it's a Lando Norris pole that he converts into a win. I think this is where he will start to claw back that advantage that Piastri has in the championship, which is currently at 15 points. I think he'll claw that back now, and make this even more interesting than we have at the moment. I've gone in second place. I was kind of annoyed when Daniel said Hamilton because I wanted my one to be the surprise, but he was the one who sprung the trap first. But I've also gone for Lewis Hamilton in second. For the exact same reasons that Daniel was mentioned. I think that he's shown that on so many times he can pull out something out of absolutely nowhere. He's going to have the home crowd behind him to rally him on. And I do genuinely think that he will pull out one of those performances that makes you look and think, yeah, he is a 7 and should be an 8-time world champion. It'll be one of those performances I feel from him. I've gone Oscar Piastri in third, so not a full British podium, but at least we're going to have that third position from a country that was in the British Commonwealth. So at least there's that type of saving grace for Britain and its history, maybe. I've gone George Russell in fourth. I was really torn here because I think I kind of balance in between either Verstappen or Russell here. Verstappen, obviously, one of the best driver in the wet, I would say undeniably, versus George Russell, whose car was shown that can perform in these cooler conditions. So it was those two kind of factors that were at play, and I kind of decided the Mercedes pace won that. So I've gone Russell P4 and Verstappen P5. So that was how my top 5 shaped up. Let me go through Lucy's top 5 and kind of share what she thinks. She's gone, again, differently to the rest of us. She said pole for Lando Norris, but she thinks Max Verstappen is the one who will be standing on the top step of the podium come Sunday. She thinks that it will be followed by both McLarens in the order of Norris first and Piastri second. So a podium of Verstappen, Norris, Piastri in that order. She's then gone for Kimi Antonelli in P4, which is someone that I guess only Daniel mentioned in the top 5, but she thinks that the Mercedes in his hands will perform well. And then Charles Leclerc will be rounding out the top 5. So she doesn't have the same belief in as me and Daniel in terms of Hamilton showing us levels. But that was her top 5 and pole. Daniel, do you want to reveal your DNF and random prediction then?
Yeah, sure. DNF is going to be Pierre Gasly because, little stat, he hasn't actually finished a British Grand Prix since 2021. So that was the last one that he actually saw the checkered flag in, which is a bit of a torrid time of it for Pierre Gasly. Obviously, in 2022, it was that first lap pile-up kind of thing involving Zhou and Russell and everything. He was kind of caught up in that. And then I think it was reliability one year and contact with Stroll the other year that kind of ruled him out. So he has been in the wars. It's kind of a bogey track for him, you could say, in that regard. So I've put him as my DNF. And my random prediction is that the total number of laps under the safety car will exceed 9. So my thinking behind that is, 9, it's quite a lot of laps when you consider that Silverstone is a 50-lap race, I want to say. So it's just under a fifth of the laps, which is quite a lot. But we have seen quite a few instances there in the past, especially in 2021, 2022. So I just think, with a load of rookies on the grid as well, there could be a few more mistakes creeping in, and we could see that kind of thing coming to the fore and bringing out Bernd Mailander in his trusty little Aston Martin a few times.
That is a very betting prediction, I feel. It's, again, a very unique one, so props to that. We're getting a wide variety of predictions and prediction types on the pod. But exceeding 9 laps, that is interesting. Are we saying, and I guess on a technicality, are we saying if the safety car is out for 9 laps only, you do not get the point, or are we saying 9 plus?
No, I guess because of the wording, I have to concede. I said it will exceed 9 laps, so it has to be 10 or more.
Okay, got you.
I think.
Just wanted to clear that up in case we have any debate come review day, I guess. But good predictions there. Callum, why don't you reveal and share, I guess, what you expect to happen?
Okay, so for my driver DNF, I've, as I alluded to in the discussion beforehand, I've gone for a Williams as the driver to DNF, as I unfortunately don't think that they're going to be able to sort out their reliability issues, or certainly their reliability issues are still going to be a potential big problem for them at Silverstone, especially due to the 1 week turnaround since Austria. And so I've gone with Carlos Sainz. Again, something I really do not want to see, so I'm more predicting with my head and not my heart. And then for my wild prediction, I think that obviously last time around in Austria, I went with 3 drivers, I think, spinning at turn 4. So I'm kind of going along similar lines. I think we're going to see 2 driver DNFs from incidences at COPs. So thinking, I guess, a little bit to 2021 between Hamilton and Verstappen. So around COPs, 2 drivers DNF as a result of some incidences there.
Are you seeing this as like a Verstappen-Hamilton type incident, or do we think this is going to be a little bit less severe?
Well, I'd hope that it's less severe, as obviously we don't want to wish harm on any of our drivers. But I don't know, maybe not as like literally slamming into all of Verstappen, maybe just clipping the tires, but some incident which causes the drivers to DNF essentially.
We'll see if that materializes. Let's do mine and then Lucy's, then we can round out the show. I have also gone down the same route as Callum, because I've said that Carlos Sainz will get a DNF. Now, heating on Williams worked last time. If it worked once, why not try it again? Am I right? I'm just being nice to Alex Albon by not choosing him again. So that was my reasoning behind that. My random prediction, and I want your guys' thoughts on this. I'd said first lap safety car plus. So what I'm saying is on the first lap, we'll either get a safety car or a red flag. Is that too wide and too broad? What do you think?
I think I'd allow it, to be honest. I think the last time we had a safety car plus on lap 1 was 2022. So, yeah, I think it's fine. What do you think, Callum?
I think that's fine. It's not like, I suppose, like Monaco, where there's the track is just, or like Canada, where the boundaries to the track are just so narrow, because there are certainly, even though obviously there are chicanes that especially the one after the first straight, and also Magnussen and Beckett's, for example, with that we could have some collisions, but I think that's reasonable.
And I don't need to ask whether Lucy finds this unreasonable or not, because she's not here. Yes. So that will live, which is nice. I think the fact that I just see a first lap incident, and I do think if there is an incident, there is a high chance that it's a safety car level incident, because the pack is so close, everyone is going to be vying for points. I think it's a distinct possibility, which is why I predicted it. The last one is Lucy's, as she decided that it would be a Russell DNF, which is an interesting one. I do wonder if that is Mercedes engine related. We've seen a lot of Mercedes powertrains or Mercedes engines calling it quits. So it's possible that Russell might be the next victim of that. And her random prediction is Haas double points. Now, Haas, we are always in and around those positions, but a double points position is definitely pretty rare for them. So I'm completely fine with that being allowed too. But that brings us to the end of the show. I want to thank my guests, Daniel and Callum, for coming on once again. We will see you at some point next week when we unpack the events of the British Grand Prix. So I want to thank you guys for watching or listening from your seats at home, and we will see you then. I've been your host, Anwar, and goodbye.